LiSTNR production.
A warning. This episode contains references to sexual assault, child sexual abuse, and violence against children. If this content does affect you, the number for Lifeline is 13 11 14. At 4 p.m. on the 26th of June 2006, police were notified that a young girl had gone missing in Perth. Moments later, her body was found and an expansive crime scene was established. With an unknown and clearly dangerous offender on the run, police were now working against the clock to preserve crucial evidence and find who was responsible. Then Detective Paul Litherland was too close to the victim's family to investigate, so was forced to watch on as police began their search for the offender. I'm former police officer Brent Sanders, and for the past 25 years, I've dedicated myself to sharing what I've learnt on the force to the Australian public so they can better protect themselves from falling victim to crime. So with the help of some of the most respected current and former detectives and high-ranking law enforcement agents, we're going to pull back the curtain on what life is like on the force and what they've learned about how crime and criminals really work. These are real stories from real detectives.
The young girl we're talking about, she was with her uncle and her brother. They just went to a local shopping centre in Perth here, and a Livingston shopping centre in Canning Vale, and there was a person who was working at one of the shops there who was known to the WA police in regards to sexual assault and indecent assault. And sadly, the young girl just popped down to the loo and went down to the cubicles, down to the toilets, and the offender was waiting for her in the disabled toilet. So as the young girl walked past, heading back out to the shops to see her uncle and her brother, the offender grabbed her, dragged her into the cubicle and sexually assaulted her and murdered her. So unfortunately, for a good almost 30 minutes, the family were trying to find the young girl and didn't know where she was. Her brother went down to the toilets, knocked on doors, but obviously couldn't see her or couldn't hear anything. So they went out again, looked through the shops, came back only a few minutes later, and now the disabled toilet was open, and that's when he encountered his poor little sister. So that affected the family significantly. Her dad was actually overseas on business, so one of the most heartbreaking things, especially myself as a father, was him being told overseas and having to get on a couple of planes and be in the air for 22 hours, knowing that he couldn't console his family. It would have been a heartbreaking situation for him.
Just hearing that story, it's a terrible situation, and one that, thankfully, these are quite rare scenarios, these sort of almost opportunist situations with young children. They're out of their parents' or their carers' sight for a few minutes to go to the bathroom, and the offender, you say, was known to police, and I guess because of that, in an investigation like this, anybody who is known to the police to have some previous involving children things becomes very much a fair way up the list as a suspect. And he was working there, was he, in that shopping complex?
Yeah, he was working at the Woolies there, and obviously through investigation work, and as we do, we get names, we get details. You got a list of obviously the detectives got a list of those working in the shopping centre, and of course, as soon as one of them read his name, they went, "Yep, that's our man." So they went round to his house, did a warrant, and this sort of links into what I do now, Brent, is in my cyber education. The offender was very prevalent online. He was interacting with young girls in the area. He had a number of fake accounts on social media sites. So from my interest there, even early in my career, I really started to understand, I suppose, the vulnerabilities of the internet and how it works. And sadly, this guy was sort of stuck in his room from 16, 17 years of age right up to 24, and was right in that world of some pretty horrific stuff online. So you could understand to a degree why he may have been offending.
CCTV footage, did that play any part within a shopping centre like that with regards to the investigation?
Sadly, the cameras weren't actually working. They were being serviced and they were due to be upgraded. So unfortunately, no, because that would have obviously brought crucial evidence to him entering and exiting at the time. So it was luckily very good groundwork, detective work, which managed to identify him very early in the investigation. And they were pretty much on the scene pretty quickly, at his place at least anyway.
Paul, a little bit of a twist to the tale. Following the investigation, interviewing, arrests, the offender, Dante Arthurs, appears in court. But the case is initially thrown out due to robust interviewing techniques from West Australian Police. Can you fill in a few little gaps around that for us?
When they sort of released that into the media, it was very negative against the Australian Police, against WAPOL, because it was advertised almost to the degree, or promoted to the degree, that coppers were throwing him against walls and doing all this sort of stuff. But when we got into the nitty-gritty of it, and it's obviously I've got to be very cautious and respectful to WAPOL in regards to the process of this, but it was just basically, okay, mate, banging on desks, say, come on, we know what you've done, okay? Have the courage to admit it. We know what's happened here, okay? And that line of questioning sadly brought a little bit of controversy into the case, and the magistrate deemed it a little bit too robust. It was going on for a little bit too long, and they threw all that evidence out in regards to his statement, his video record and all that sort of stuff. So that sort of hindered, to a degree, how the investigation would proceed, and of course how the court process would proceed as well.
So the case proceeded, but there was aspects of the evidence that WAPOL were going to present that were deemed inadmissible.
So at that stage, Arthurs was pleading not guilty right up through the process. There was obviously discussion between prosecution and defence in regards to agreeing to pleas and stuff like that. So eventually, after I think it was about 9 months, almost a year, he decided to say, okay, I'm happy to admit this and concede that, and the matter proceeded. So it never had to go to trial anyway, which was good.
The massive benefit there, of course, is if an offender is brought to court facing charges and they nod the head, they coughed it, they plead guilty, it means that we don't have to have that evidence presented in court. So it means that the family and others, and goodness me, the young girl's brother, others that were there, would have had to have been called to give evidence. So, of course, getting a guilty plea is what the police are after, and it saves a whole lot of that pain for the family too, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the public probably sort of overlooked that a little bit, as much as, we can concede defeat to a degree. There's lesser penalties at times, or less fines or whatever, but as you suggest, the family were a very close family, or are a very close family, but they were very closed and very, very quiet and very private. So one of the things I am so happy is they didn't have to get dragged through the court process and have to hear what the last few minutes of their daughter's life. It would have been heartbreaking. And I think with cases like this, which brought national and international attention, it rocked our nation. And I think from a sense from the magistrate in regards to sentencing and penalties, I think he took that into consideration very, very well. But sadly, he was sort of confined by legislation as well, because at that time in Western Australia, the penalty for murder was only 20 years. So that's deemed life, with a non-parole period of 14 years. So realistically, Dante pleaded guilty. There's a good chance he was only going to be spending 13, 14 years of time in prison. So that was concerning. And the positives we have as a result of that, this case, the laws in WA were changed in regards to the maximum penalties for murder and willful murder. So as much as this poor young girl went through, her voice has been heard as a result of that, which is magnificent. The removal of the non-parole period was the factor which was concerning to the public when Dante was convicted. So a lot of people hear the word life and they think, as you've suggested, oh, okay, well, he's going to be in jail until he dies. So when I especially started doing my advocacy, and we spoke quite strongly about, I built a petition to keep Dante Arthurs in jail, a lot of people were quite shocked to go, oh no, he was only sentenced to 13 years. So when you say the word life, people get confused. So it taking away that ability to be almost, for want of a better term, get out of jail free early in front of 20 years has been taken away now, which is a positive.
And just a couple of steps back on that, you mentioned you started a petition, and this was around the fact that the offender Dante was due for parole, up for parole, potential early release around 2018-19. Now you started a local petition to keep him locked away. Goodness me, 250,000 signatures in the initial sort of few weeks of that. Can you just explain some of that to us?
Yeah, I sort of was getting a little bit worried. I did speak to the family regularly about the fact that parole was coming up, and I asked the family, look, we want to keep him inside. I think 13 years is way too short considering what he's done, and I got the go-ahead there. So I just started almost a written petition realistically, and someone suggested I pop that onto Change.org and on the website, and within six to 7 weeks it had got up to 100,000, 120,000, and started getting a bit of media. And then, within probably 2-3 weeks before the parole hearing, we got up to 245,000 signatures. So it sent a very good signal to our Attorney General, Mr. Quigley, John Quigley, that the community weren't ready to accept Dante's release. And it's continued to send a message to everyone in the community that we were still hurting from this and it was still resonating here in WA. So, yeah, it was great to see that support from the community in regards to keeping him inside.
What was the end result with regards to his application for parole?
It was denied, which is great. He's now been through his second denial process now as well, and it'll be, I think, another 18 months before I have to do it again, and we'll throw it out there again. But I know, as the family does, that we can't keep Dante in jail forever. I believe, like anyone, everyone has the right to rehabilitation, but I just want to make sure that if he hasn't changed, if he hasn't taken those opportunities, I just want to make sure that the community is not at risk. And I hope I'm not over-treading here, but I speak on behalf of the families. We just don't want him to ever put anyone through this again. And we can get guarantees of that, not that we can, then I'll be okay with him coming out to a degree, but we've just got to make sure that we're ticking boxes, and that's what it's always been about for me. I just didn't want him to rock up to a parole board and someone just go, yeah, whatever, tick a box, and that's it. We've got to get better than that.
Look, and goodness me, you know, we all are aware of horrendous stories of offenders perhaps being able to pull the wool over the eyes and parole boards and getting out and within very short periods of time committing, you know, like-minded horrendous crimes, which is what put them away in the first place. Now, this is not, of course, always the case, but it's a double-edged sword too, isn't it, Paul? Because as you quite rightly said, at some point, this offender will get out. The benefit of getting out under a parole process is it's a sort of a staged release, isn't it? Where under parole, the offender's out, but there's all sorts of parole conditions, which can be curfews, not going near schools, and a parole officer that keeps an eye on them, no alcohol, no drugs. Of course, if they serve their full sentence and they walk out of prison, that's it. There's no... So it's very much a catch-22, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is where, again, from my perspective, and I suppose all the WA community, is to make sure that the boxes are ticked and things are in place. You can't guarantee anything, but to at least have justification if that something does go wrong or something does happen, we can go, yeah, well, we gave him those opportunities, and he failed to take those. So, but you're right, if your sentence is fully done, you can walk out, there's no constrictions. So the positive about the parole system is you get that opportunity to show that you have changed, and if you don't, you can go back in, which is a positive.
This case, and for very obvious reasons, your close connection to it, very much sparked or inspired within you an interest to get involved in online safety and things such as that. Did you pick that up within your time in the job and start working in that area, or was that more something that you picked up after perhaps leaving the police?
When this crime occurred, I really started getting interested in how a lot of the kids at school were starting to get phones, getting into the online world, and I always considered or really, I suppose, worried about how Dante Arthurs was interacting with children online and the vulnerabilities of the networks he was using. So that sparked an interest, and coincidentally, Brent, I had a hard drive that just popped itself at home, and I had a mate who was the boss up at Tech Crime in Perth here. So I just took my hard drive up and said, like, I've lost all my files. Can you get them back? We started a bit of a conversation while we were waiting for that process to happen. I didn't know about computers. Yeah, I did. And 3 weeks later, I was working at Technology Crime as an investigative coordinator there. So it was great. And for 6 years I stayed there, got some great training, got some great experience and qualifications, and it sort of progressed from there.
It's just interesting how there's these sliding door moments, aren't there, Paul, in careers and in career changes and things such as that. And if something positive can come out of such a tragic case here that you had that personal involvement, and maybe one of the positives is someone like yourself was moved towards something that became almost a bit of a calling for you.
Yeah, for sure, Brent. And I think, I was just literally at a primary school this morning, and I share a lot of my stories, as we do, our worries, and I spoke about a scamming case for a kid that got scammed some money online, and I say to kids, look, a lot of people think sometimes I might make stuff up just to prove a point, but the reason I do what I do is because of these experiences. The reason I share my knowledge is based on what I've seen, and this is what that foundation, I suppose, with any police officer or ex-police officer who leaves the job, it's basically what we do. That's how we're designed. So being able to sort of continue to push into the area I'm working in now and use those experiences to teach and educate is a great opportunity.
Coming up, the heartbeat, life or death moment that offers insight into the brutal reality of policing.
Did I see it or didn't I see it? And for some reason, I just thought I saw the panel van driving down without his lights on. But I thought, no, he couldn't have done it that quick.
Paul, if I can take you back to 1999 or thereabouts, you're involved in a case with multiple moving parts. Can you just give us a bit of an insight into this case?
Yeah, this one is, out of a 20-year policing career, this is the one that sort of impacted me the most emotionally. We were working a late afternoon shift. There was a couple of guys doing some home invasions over in City Beach, a western suburb of Perth. And we were in Cottesloe, so we were in a Cottesloe patrol car. So we thought, we'll scoot over and give the guys over there a hand, see if we can find him. These guys were literally walking into people's houses while they were there. They were armed with knives, taking purses, stealing cars, taking car keys and all that sort of stuff as well. So it was a really quiet night. It was a just finished summer, but it was really quiet. And we head up to City Beach, and as we were heading up, we were going down Weaponess Road, which is east-west road in Perth, and this panel van came bolting past us really quickly. So it was probably doing about 90 k's an hour in the 60 zone. So we did a U-turn. I was driving, my partner in the passenger seat, obviously, and we pulled this guy over, and as my partner got out of the car, the radio came on and the operations manager said, oh, look, these guys with the home invasion are literally in someone's yard now. So my mate was already out talking to the driver of the car, so I just tooted the horn and said, look, we got to go. They're down the road. So we thought these two in the car might have been our home invaders, but obviously it turned out they weren't. So my partner said, look, pull your heads in. We've got better things to do. If we see your car again, we're going to give you a ticket, blah, blah, blah. So we jumped in the car. We headed off. Now, we were one step behind these home invaders, Brent, and we knew they weren't too far away. So we parked the car up and then just walked around on foot for about 10 minutes to try and hopefully they'll just come around the corner and walk into us. And all the time we were doing that, we could hear this panel van still doing burnouts and driving around like an idiot. So as we were walking down a really quiet street, we saw him bolt past the opening of the street, and again, he was doing about 90 k's an hour in the 60 zone. So my partner said, next time we see him, if we see him again on the way back, let's sticker the car and charge him with dangerous. So didn't hear him again for a bit. Sadly, the radio operator saying, look, we can't find these two home invaders. So we thought, okay, look, it's 20 minutes before we knock off. We'll head back to the station and call it quits. As we were heading back to the station again, coming the opposite way up a dual carriageway is this bloody panel van. So again, flying as fast as he could. So I did a U-turn. Okay, let's go pull him over. Now we did a U-turn, and we couldn't find him. So we went through a set of traffic lights. I looked left, my partner looked forward to clear the intersection for me. You know those moments, mate, where you just have that little thought, did I see it or didn't I see it? And for some reason, I just thought I saw the panel van driving down Howtree past the shopping centre without his lights on. But I thought, no, he couldn't have done it that quick. So we went up over the top of the hill, which is Cambridge Street. Now, from City Beach, you can see all the way into West Perth on Cambridge. He wasn't there. So I said to my partner, turned left at the lights. So we did a U-turn, went back. We sat at a roundabout on Howtree, which was just in the middle of nowhere, and we just wound the windows down. We thought we might be able to hear him. Coincidentally, there was an old guy sitting in a car, just sitting at the lights, and because we still had our strobe lights going, but we didn't have the siren going. So he was a little bit confused. Well, what do you want me to do, boys? Do you want me to drive through or not? So he just crept past us in his car. All of a sudden on the radio, a Charlie car, a detective's car, Charlie 200 urgent. And of course, when you heard an urgent call from a Charlie from a detective's car, you knew something was going on. There's been a car crash out the front of my house. We need ambulances here pretty quick. So we said straight away, that'll be our panel van. So we turned left, we bolted down, and mate, the horror of what we saw coming up over the corner of that street on the boulevard in Floret was stays with me to this day. The panel van, there was an amazing gentleman who was heading home. He was coming home from a volunteers meeting, and he was in a red Camry or Camira, Holden Camira. You don't see them anymore. But the panel van crossed the wrong side of the road, hit him head on, and he hit him so hard that he spun the Camira around, and then he hit him up the back as well. So the Camira was knocked probably 40 metres down the road, and the two guys in the panel van were okay. It was a big V8 XD panel van, but they were screaming because their legs were sore and all that sort of stuff. So it was absolutely brutal, absolutely brutal. So I jumped out, went to the Camira, and my partner jumped out, went to the panel van. And as soon as I looked into the window of this car, it was clear that the driver was deceased. It was a horrible scene, and out of respect to the family, I won't mention what I saw, but it sticks with me today. So I was pretty angry. I bolted back over to the panel van and had a few words to say to the panel van driver. We told you to slow down, mate. Why didn't you do it? And he was carrying on. He didn't have a clue what I was talking about really anyway. So I went back over to the Camira and just spent a bit of time with the gentleman, sort of positioned him a little bit better because he looked uncomfortable. And I know that sounds weird, but in that moment I knew he'd passed away. I knew he was dead, but I just felt I had to sort of just straighten him up a little bit just to make him comfortable. And that's started, I suppose, an incident which would rock me for my entire career.
So many moving parts in that story, Paul, and it almost like a perfect storm of events. No doubt part of what stays with you is that, what if, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, what if we'd stopped? What if we'd got that guy out of the panel van earlier? It's all these, and that's what plays on your mind, doesn't it? It's not just what's happened, it's what could have happened if I'd done this, if I'd done that.
Yeah. We initially, my partner and I were separated at the crash scene. And I mean, I was still relatively a junior police officer, and I was probably only 5 years in the job, 6 years in the job. And I was being interviewed by a sergeant, just say, look, what happened? How did this occur? Blah, blah, blah. And once we got into the questioning process, I started thinking, hold on, they think we were chasing the car. They think we were chasing him. Now, we weren't chasing him, of course, but I've gone, okay, no, we weren't chasing. Is that where you're going at? Well, let's get this going. We'll get the investigation going. We'll ask those questions later. So we were separated. We were told to go home. We were told not to speak to each other. And of course, the following morning, or 2 days later, there's front page of the West Australian, police release drink driver who kills innocent driver. So I said to my partner, was he drunk? We didn't know he was drunk, okay, and he was over the limit. But of course, I never got out of the car, but I said to my partner, did he smell drunk? No, mate, he didn't smell drunk. They were cohesive, they were coherent, they were a couple of teenagers, just a couple of teenagers heading off to the shops. So, of course, then it all turned to poo then, for want of a better term. A lot of my family were contacting me, a lot of other police officers going, "What's going on, Lithers? How did this happen? We didn't know." And you're right to cover off if only, and that played with me for years, Brent. If only we'd just said to him, look, or to the radio operator, VKI, look, we've got a drink driver now, that the home invaders will have to wait. That has stayed with me for 20 years. So, but then people would also say, and if you'd taken the drink driver and someone got stabbed in their home by one of these home invaders, I would have been equally concerned. So it was just, like you said, one of those sliding door moments. And luckily that investigation, and what saved us, well, for want of a better term, there was a Crime Stoppers story put out to say, look, if anyone heard anything or knows anything about this particular crash, please contact police. And you would have remembered, and your listeners would have remembered me saying about the old guy driving the car through the traffic lights when we were sitting there. He actually rang in and said, look, I remember there was a police car sitting in the middle of the intersection with its lights going. Now, I got angry with them because I thought, what are you doing, you silly police officers? And his statement married up with my story and my partner's story. And they found footage of the car going past exactly as I'd seen with his lights off. And of course, 34 seconds later, myself and my partner drive past. So we were vindicated at the fact that we hadn't done anything wrong. But again, I was heartbroken because I was feeling elated and the family of this poor man was still going through hell. So I felt so guilty about that. And this is where, again, the different sides of the sword or the different sides of the coin of policing, a lot of the public don't see. They don't really understand that. And that was very, very difficult for me to deal with. Honest with you here, I was struggling with this case, mate. Out of everything I did, there was also, as coppers, we switch off. You wear the uniform, and it's hard to explain that to civvies or to civilians sometimes, where you just do the job. You do the job, but this one really, really affected me. I felt I was the blame for this man's death. Probably 4 weeks before the trial, a member of the family was interviewed on the news, and I saw them on the TV, and I was watching this story with my wife, and it was the brother of the deceased, and he said, look, the reporter said, oh, look, do you blame police because they let him go? And he goes, no, we don't blame anyone except the driver. And I just lost it. I'm sitting there on the couch, and I just bawled my eyes out. We went to court, we gave evidence, he pleaded not guilty, we gave our evidence, and as he was found guilty, I stayed for the entire trial. As he was found guilty, see you later, off you go, 10 years, and he spent 7 inside. The family were thanking the prosecutor, and I just started walking through the court to head out, and his wife just turned to me, she grabbed my hand, and she said, I don't blame you. And to this day, you sense it's hitting me already. And that really reset my focus, and it almost changed my life because I felt so guilty that I'd caused the death of this gentleman. But for her to take that moment, someone who's in such horrible grief, to go, Paul, we don't blame you. Wow. And I went outside. Now, as coppers in the court building, you're not supposed to use the public toilets because you're in uniform. Something could happen. So, but I just said, stuff it. I kicked the door open of the toilets, found a cubicle, looked under the doors to make sure no one was in there, and I just lost it, mate. I just lost it. And of course, the echo off the walls, I'm covering my mouth, trying to cover my sobs. That it was such a massive relief. And that, like I said, that remains a 20-year career. That remains the one that sticks with me the most.
Paul, I can hear the emotion in your voice, mate, and you are recalling, and I thank you so much for your honesty and your candour. You're recalling an incident which happened 25 years ago, but that raw emotion, 25 years on, so many different mixed emotions, but those simple 4 words, we don't blame you, and like you say, literally was a pivotal time. It changed the course of your life, changed that sort of mindset that you were in. Such a powerful story, Paul. Yeah,
and it's a side of policing the public never see. It's is those what ifs, if only I'd done this, if only I'd done that. And we forget it's not that you criticise people for thinking that way. The vast majority of the time you have police in your lives, as they come and go, you've either done something wrong or something terrible has happened in your life. So it's a side of policing that we don't really emphasise, and you can see why so many officers struggle to deal with what they've gone through. PTSD is massive in our organisation, both within serving and non-serving police officers. So it's these little things that stick with you. I was lucky. I had a great support network and I was able to find ways to get through it. But like I said, 25 years later now, mate, to this day, I still have that image of that poor man burnt into my head, and it still hits me. It still hits me. So it's about really trying to continue to emphasise that we just got to support our police where we can, and understand that when we put the uniform on, it's not like Superman going into the old phone box and or Clark Kent putting the Superman uniform on. It's a tough job. It's a tough job.
Paul, yours was a 20-year career. Could I ask you, since leaving the job, where has that taken you? What career paths have you taken?
Okay, so I got really frustrated. I mean, I started at Tech Crime in 2009. By 2010-11, I'd got really frustrated with how poorly we were being assisted from the networks, so Facebook, Instagram, all that sort of stuff. So I thought, they're not listening, they're not assisting. So I just went out and did a couple of cyber safety presentations at my son's school, much to his embarrassment, and I got a bit of a buzz for that. And before you knew it, I had 10 or 15 other schools contacting me. So Surf Online Safe was born in 2013, and by 2014 I had to make a decision, either stay in the police or go out and work on my passion of educating kids, and I chose the latter. So since then, things have just gone absolutely crazy. I'm speaking now with 850 schools across the nation. I've spoken to well over 500,000 Australian children, and just sharing my messages in regards to online harm and risk. And so continuing to build that. Surf Online Safe, I'm very proud to the fact that I'm now considered one of Australia's leading educators in this field, and I'm very proud of that. And just the work I've been doing within schools and my education in 2022, I was very, very, very honoured to be named the 22 WA Australian of the Year. So it's just snowballed from there. So it's been such a whirlwind. It's been great.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Paul. And we go back to that awful, terrible case that opened up our discussion here this afternoon. And as awful as that terrible case was, it was that spark for you to start to move in that direction. And as we said earlier, these sliding door moments that we have in life, and we go back and it all starts to sort of fall into place. We don't see it at the time, but it's almost like there's this planned path that we take. And here you are, having spoken to, over 500,000 students, and the benefit that you can share with them from all your first-hand experiences. It makes it so worthwhile.
Yeah, and I think we forget that sometimes, and we're lucky. We've got the, I suppose, hindsight of age, mate. So it's great. But I was very, very proud to have been invited to conduct a valedictory speech at one of my most favourite schools, Leeming Senior High School, and I said just that, mate. I found one of the most horrible negatives of my life turned out to be a positive. It turned out to be something that has really changed my life and the lives of others. So, and hey mate, this is the footy coach coming out of me, but you learn more, boys, from your losses than you ever do from your wins. Okay, and that's my message to my team, and I say that to my kids as well. It's about just trying to understand, even though things might not be going right here, you'll get there. We'll get there, and to be able to build that opportunity to continue to motivate through education and get them to assess risk. It's what I'm all about, and that's one of the proudest things I'm doing at the moment. It's just being heard and giving them an opportunity to understand risk.
Paul, I want to thank you for your 20 years service to the good people of Western Australia, and thanks so much for coming on. I've so much enjoyed the chat, and I know those listening will take so much from it. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks, mate. All the best.
Crime Insiders Detectives is a LiSTNR original production. It's hosted by me, Brent Sanders, produced by Ed Gooden, and sound designed and imaged by Link Kelly.